Good evening, I'm Risë. I serve as an assistant dean of Yale College and the director of the Afro-American Cultural Center. And I also serve as the chair of Yale's MLK Commemoration Planning Committee. I'm so pleased to welcome you to the 19th annual event that honors the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, sponsored by the Yale College Dean's Office, the Office of the Secretary and Vice President for Student Life, and the Afro-American Cultural Center. I first want to recognize the Quinnipiac Nation, upon whose land Yale has built this university for students to learn and grow. For when we acknowledge the traditional land that we stand on, we remember and honor our forebears, our elders, and our connection to the earth. We recognize a longer and richer story that informs our present and shapes our future. As many of you know, I'm from New Haven, and I take great pride in being from the Elm and in being the first New Havener to direct Yale's Afghan House. It is the oldest Black cultural center in the Ivy League and one of the first in the nation. I'm even prouder that I can bring to you this year's commemoration, which for the first time since the university officially started celebrating Dr. King with an annual event in 2000, focuses on local activists who have fought tirelessly to respond to local issues and community needs through direct action, healing, and art. In his 1956 Facing the Challenge of a New Age, Dr. King wrote, "The end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community." It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of many, and all people, might edit. We are indeed facing the challenge of a new age here at Yale, in Connecticut, the United States, and across the globe. Tonight's speakers live a life dedicated to the notion of the beloved community through their work, day in and day out, through the years, through these streets. They honor King's life by being servant leaders, activists, healers, and educators, by living faith in action, by continuously striving for the ideals of peace, justice, and liberation in our city, for they know that our liberation is bound up together, as artists, activist, and academic Lilla Watson suggested. Listening to their stories and perspectives, the committee and I hope that you will more intentionally consider the connection between local and global communities and community advocacy, healing, and activism. We hope that you'll learn about critical needs in Greater New Haven and about the grassroots advocacy and activism efforts that have been responding to those needs and advocating for our communities. And we hope that you will be inspired to become even more civically engaged in New Haven yourselves, in your own spheres of influence and within your capacities to make an impact on our town and our future. I want to thank you again for attending, and I'm going to pass it over to Cruz López, Program Coordinator for Connecticut for a Dream, who will offer opening remarks and introduce tonight's amazing speakers. Please welcome Eric.
So I'm mostly used to speaking at like a protest or like a rally, things like that, behind the podium. So I would really appreciate it if you hear something that you like, you make some noise, you give me some feedback, you say a yes and amen, whatever sparks in your heart, if you hear something that you like. Does that sound good? Yeah! Cool. Does everybody hear me well? Yeah! Also good. All right, cool. So first off, my name is Eric Cruz López. I was born in Mexico, in Santa Maria del Tule, Oaxaca. It's a pretty cool place. There's a really big tree. Thank you. It's a really big tree that's been there for thousands of years, just like my people have. And so I grew up there, kind of very poor. My dad left when I was about 3 or 4 to come to the US and work, and send money back, right, because that's what families in Mexico do. 3-4 years later, we kind of realized that that wasn't really working out. I missed my dad, but at the same time, I kind of had forgotten about him. And my mom was also living in the same place. And so then we just decided to come to the US, right? My parents were like, all right, we're going on vacation. you're going to Disneyland, you're going to come to the US, go on vacation for a bit. I was like, cool, let's go. So we take a plane to the border, we land, we get off, and then we go to a house that's like full of people. And everything's dark, right? Definitely not a place that I'm like, all right, I'm going on vacation. And so we stay there for a couple of days, right? I'm kind of like, all right, these don't really feel like a vacation, but okay. And then one night, at about 3 a.m., they wake us up, my mom, my brother, and I, and my cousin, and they tell us it's time, right? And I'm like, all right, cool, let's go. It's time for what? I don't know, but let's go. So we get up, we get in a van or a truck, and we drive out to the desert, and they drop us off, and we start walking. And we start walking, and by the way, at this point, I'm 7 years old, right? So you can imagine a smaller me. Carrying a gallon of water with a winter coat with a group of about 10 to 15 other people. Just walking through the desert in the middle of the night. And this was the first time that I had really felt the cold, because when they tell you that the desert is cold at night, it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
And we walked for hours through some hills, some mountains, some ditches that seemed really big to 7-year-old me, but I'm sure we're not that big. And then eventually we get stopped. And we get stopped by Customs and Border Patrol, and they roll up in their vans and they surround us. They get out of the car and they point guns at us and they tell us to get on the ground. And I'm not that surprised, because before I left, I didn't understand it, but they would tell me, if anybody ever tells you to get on the ground, just get on the ground, because they knew where I was going, but I didn't yet. And so we were on the ground, you know, kind of guns pointed at us. They're kind of searching us. They put us in a van. They drive us to the detention center. And we stayed there for a couple of hours. And that was the first experience that I had behind bars. And I was with my mom and my sister, with my mom and my brother. And I was scared. I was 7 and I was behind bars and I had no idea what was happening. Eventually we get let go. They send us back to Mexico. We come back again. We made it the second time, obviously, right? I'm here talking to y'all. Nothing has happened yet, and hopefully nothing will happen. And so then I grew up in Bridgeport. Grew up a couple towns down, Bridgeport. Love Bridgeport. Thank you. Grew up poor, grew up undocumented, right? So I grew up without health insurance. Grew up with a low quality of education. Grew up with a lot of the things that happen in the inner city and to young people like myself. But because my family supported me, I just did really good in school, and I was one of those kind of high-achieving undocumented students, and I went to UConn. You know, so was at UConn, was studying, and I was invited to an event by one of my friends. And at this event, it was a story-sharing event. And one of my now friends went up there and shared their story about how they were undocumented and found the movement. And in that moment, I realized that that could have also been me. And so that day, I decided to make kind of like the biggest pivot in my life that I had made at that point and started organizing.
Yes.
And it was awesome. It was really cool. And so I became part of Connecticut Students for a Dream, which organizes undocumented students all across Connecticut. We do a lot of really cool work. And so I hope that all of you find something here that y'all will identify and will hopefully change the way that you walk through the world so that it's in a different way. So that when you leave here, right, maybe you don't do something immediately after this, but you begin to look at things differently and look at yourself differently, giving yourself room to grow. And I would be remiss if I stand here and don't honor the legacies of my indigenous forebears, the Mikveh people and the Zapotec people who were not conquered, who lived and who suffered and who produced me. And I would also be remiss if I didn't honor the Black revolutionaries who paved the way for me to be here, for this event to exist. Right. Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, Fred Hampton, Angela Davis, and countless others are the reason why I stand here and why we're all in this room. And I know that as immigrants, Martin Luther King Jr. would stand with us because we know that he held a globalist belief, internationalist beliefs, because he knew that imperialism, racism, classism, and sexism were universal and are still universal. Yes. And it is these factors that are global that affect people like myself, that push people like myself out of my country and into this one, and now keep me trapped in this one because I can't leave, because then I can't come back. I've lived here for 16 years, and if I leave this life. And I don't really want to do that, you know? And so then after these families are pushed out of their countries and come here into New Haven and to Bridgeport and cities like us, you know, we kind of foolishly believe that they're safe because New Haven's proclaimed a sanctuary city, right? But these same cities are the same ones that lock up our people, that incarcerate sex workers, black activists, and just literally anybody they could find their hands on. And so they're not really safe for people like myself, but not only that, but for the majority of people in New Haven. But we have power, and I know we have power because of a lot of the amazing organizations that are here. ULA, People for Police Brutality, Connecticut Students for a Dream, Citywide Youth Coalition, the Immigrant Bail Fund, and a lot of organizations that I'm probably leaving out. And it's with this power that we've changed laws, moved mountains, and changed names, right? So shout out to Grace Hopper College and the community work that went into that. Shout out to the deportation that have been stopped by ULA in the current fight with Nelson at First and Summerfield. Shout out to the bail fund, ending the fight in Connecticut to end bail, cash bail, right? Literally taking the money and bailing people out day in and day out so they don't spend any other day in jail or in detention. And shout out to Connecticut Students for a Dream and Citywide Youth Coalition for organizing young people in New Haven, in Connecticut, to really change the way that we're going to see the future and changing the things that we're seeing right now. Passing policies, changing laws, and making things different. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. 3 quick things that all of you can do to make sure that you leave this event and do something completely different. Right, so here's some tips. 1, I want you to be present. Be present when you feel like you're called upon at a rally. Be present when you're being called out and somebody's calling you racist. Don't run away from that feeling that feels uncomfortable, right? Stay there and ask yourself why. Why does this feel weird that they just called me sexist, racist, classist? Think on it, right? Be present with your own feelings. 2, use your money and your resources. I will say this forever and ever and ever. If you have money and you say that you don't have time, use that money to make up for the time you're not putting in the movement, right? Give it to organizations that need it, because oftentimes we're out here on shoestring budgets doing who knows how much work, right? And then people look at us and be like, how do you do so much money with so little money? Yo, I don't know, but you can help, right? So if you have the money, put it there. And if you have the resources, make sure to also support with resources organizers in the community that are doing the work, whether it be childcare, transportation, and things of the sort. And number 3 is be an accomplice. I really want everybody to walk out of here with the mindset of being an accomplice, of really confronting things when you see them. If you see racism, sexism, classism in your class, in the street, in your home, I want you to stand there and be like, yo, maybe don't like kind of try to dishonor your own family, but like, hey, that's not funny. Why is that funny? Can you explain it to me? Yeah, you really take it somewhere so that they know that that's not okay, right? I also want you to be an accomplice when somebody gets stopped by the cops. I've been stopped by the cops multiple times. I was actually stopped by the cops a couple of days ago driving with my sister. They asked me if I had drugs and weapons in the car, and they kept questioning me why I was in the neighborhood. So if you see somebody stop by the cops, I want you to stop, record, and check in with them after the interaction is over. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. And last, I want us all to really work together because we need to hold a steady line against the evils of racism, capitalism, and sexism, because if we don't, they will consume us all. But we're a community. I've seen the power. I see it every day, and I want to keep seeing it. And all the people that are going to be here are going to talk about that. Is that good? Cool. So now, I want to turn to our panel discussion and introduce our speakers. And if you're wondering a little bit more about the speakers, if you look in your program, it'll be in there. So definitely take a look. So first off, I want to introduce Hanifa Mayo Washington. moderator, and she's an award-winning cultural activist, storyteller, singer-songwriter, performing artist, healing justice practitioner. As a cultural activist, Hanifa views her creativity as a radical tool for liberation, healing, and community building. Hanifa currently works with co-creating effective and inclusive organizations and organizers, also known as CIO, the Word Poetry, and as a leader in the Community Leadership Program. Hanifa served as an Inspiring Equity and Education Arts Fellow at the William Caspar Graustein Fund Memorial Fund from 2017 to 2018. In November 2017, she released her third album, Mantras for the Revolution, and in December 2018, Hanifa received a Phenomenal Women's Arts Award from the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. Up next is Barbara Fair, who was born and so Barbara Fair was also born and raised here in New Haven. So shout out to that. And here she earned her master's in social work from Southern. And Ms. Barbara is a lifelong social justice advocate and activist. And she has worked tirelessly to bring attention to solitary confinement, re-entry for the incarcerated, and issues of police brutality. As a direct result of her many years of challenging the cost of incarcerated people calling home, the FCC now has regulations and decreases the enormous cost that families have to pay to communicate with their loved ones. So shout out to that. Another New Haven native, Jafferis. So Jafferis is a hip-hop playwright and teacher working at the intersection of art, activism, and community. New Haven-based projects include Theater of the Oppressed with Leon's Sister City Project, Every 28-Hour Project with Black Lives Matter New Haven, and Malik Organization to Fight for an Empowered Civilian Review Board, which we just got, so shout out to that. Aaron is also the founding artistic director of The Word, which youth poetry program here in New Haven, which supports young people using hip-hop and spoken word as engines for justice and liberation. So he's also a former Open Rap Slam champion at the National Poetry Slam Championships, and Aaron is currently collaborating with composer Byron Wu Young and Asian American immigrant and refugee organizers nationwide to create the Activist Songbook, a collection of new songs and raps for current activists to use in movement building. And then next, we're going to call Ali, who's a radical Jewish cultural spiritual worker here in New Haven. And Ali helped start Mending Minya, a liberation-oriented Jewish Havara in New Haven. In 2017 of the Yale School of Nursing, Ali is a white trans woman and nurse practitioner striving to bring racial, economic, and disability justice politics into community psychiatric healthcare. And Ali is in the beginning stages of starting a transgender, gender nonconforming survival and support fund for other trans people in the greater New Haven. So let's give it up to Ali as well. Somebody I also hold near and dear to my heart, who was recently recognized by Connecticut Magazine in its Connecticut's 40 Under 40 class of 2018, Kerry Ellington. And so Kerry Ellington does a lot. And so I'm gonna just read a little bit about what Kerry does. But currently serves as Community and Economic Development Community Organizer at New Haven Legal Assistance. She helped establish People Against Police Brutality, a grassroots organization that fiercely advocates for police accountability across our state. She is a key leader in the Justice for Jason Negron Coalition, fighting for greater police accountability following the death of 15-year-old Jason Negron, who was fatally shot by Bridgeport police officers in 2017. Just 2 weeks ago, the New Haven Board of Alders passed an ordinance that creates a new independent civilian review board to investigate police misconduct, a significant victory that was heavily influenced by Kerry's work to organize around and support the 22-year-led fight by Miss Emma Jones, whose son Malik was killed by East Haven police officers in '97. This is what people power looks like. So please join me in welcoming the panelists to the platform.
Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Fantastic. I loved that we had a dress rehearsal earlier this evening, and that we really came back in as one. Did anyone else feel that when we returned? It's important to remember that we are, no matter what alarms get pulled, by whom and for whatever reason. So I just really want to uplift the ones in this room right now. I want to first off with, start off also with thanks and gratitude for all of you for coming out into what feels like a balmy night compared to a couple days ago, obviously this cold weather, to really sit and be with and to commemorate. I don't take that word lightly. It's a real honor to be up here with these amazing human beings. To share space with all of you. I want to thank Risë for having us and for being a real true pioneer leader here at Yale. So we see you. I will be moderating tonight. My name is Hanifa Washington, and I really feel like I'm just with a group of amazing people and my friends up here on the stage. And I will be asking some questions, answering some questions. We'll just be dialoguing, and we'll open up in a little bit to all of you for questions. So that's how we're rolling tonight. And I also would like to also repeat, like, if you feel something that's like really, someone just said something that's making you burn, like, clap it out, whistle, snap, you know, throw your hands up, like let us know that you're feeling us up here. It's important, that energy is important. We're not here to talk at you, all right? We're here with you. So that's super important for me. And are you gonna take time for this? Someone taking time? Okay, thank you. So just give me like a 10-minute warning when it's time to transition. So there are so many stories, right, up here. We're all walking, living, breathing stories, always changing moment to moment. And so I just want to start off with the first question for all of us up here. Just to say your name, my name is Hanifa Washington. I go by she, her, hers. If you want to say your preferred personal pronouns, that's cool. And just if you just want to go down and answer just what do you do, why do you do it, and what is your passion in this world and in this work of activism and healing and justice? Whoever wants to start. Don't make me pick.
Well, I hate to be first, but I hate to have this blank space, so I guess I'll go. My name is Barbara. Oh, sorry. Thank you. My name is Barbara, and Barbara Fair, and I was born and raised here in New Haven. And I've been doing this work for well over 30 years. At least the last 20 have been documented, and you can see some of that in the front, because there was no way to talk about 30 years in 5 minutes. So, but it started out as a teenager, 16 years old. My brother got arrested at 17. First time ever being arrested, and I knew absolutely nothing about the system, and so I was devastated, you know, going to court with him and seeing what was going on and not knowing what's going on. And next thing I know, they're cuffing my brother and they're taking him off, and I actually ran up to the judge and said, you know, how are you letting this happen? What's going on? And from there, I realized I had to start finding out about the criminal justice system. And that's where most of my focus is. I've worked on many, many topics, but criminal justice has always stayed with me because that was my beginning. That was when I realized I had no clue about what was going on with our people in this country. And so I joined this group. It was Citizens for Humanizing Criminal Justice, and that was, like I said, about 40 years ago. I'm probably aging myself, now that I think about it, over 50 years ago. But anyway, and it was called Citizens for Humanizing Criminal Justice, and I joined that group, and one of the things that we did back then is we managed to get trailers on the prison grounds so that families can come up on weekends and stay with their families in trailers. Of course, that was way back when there was one prison, so we could do that, and it wasn't part of our huge economy that we have now, so of course that no longer happens. But that was one of the first things that I did as a teenager, was work to see that happen. And so, like I said, it's been a long, long journey, too many things I've been involved in, so I don't want to take over the whole mic. And so that's why I left this up here, so you can look through it and see about 50 years of journey, criminal justice, prisons, re-entries, solitary confinement, stopping our prisoners from being sent down to Virginia, on education. I remember being at York facility when they had a transgender person there and fighting to get them to be able to place the person where they wanted to be, where they were, with how they saw themselves. I've been at rallies when people were sent to Virginia and 2 people were killed. I mean, it's just that 2 people murdered, killed themselves down there within less than a year. And so we had to fight to get that policy overturned. So it's been a long, long journey, so I'll kind of stop there.
What do you do? Why do you do it? And what is your passion in this world of activism, arts, and justice?
Hi. Hi. Hello. Is it working? Yes. My name is Jafferis. I go by he or they. I grew up in New Haven. My parents were not activists, but they also weren't pacifists. And I say it like that to distinguish from pacifists, because they weren't passive, or they couldn't be, especially my mom, couldn't be passive if she saw something that was not right or that didn't jive with her. She wouldn't like go out in the street and protest, but she would try to do something small that felt like it made sense with her heart. And so kind of my journey towards becoming an activist started when she was like, even though all the white families in Westville send their kids to every school but Hill House, basically because of racism. My mother was like, that's strange, like Hill House is the school that us Westville people were supposed to go to. So she encouraged me to consider it. I visited Hill House as well as a bunch of other high schools in New Haven. Hill House was the best atmosphere, the friendliest atmosphere. So I went there. And my experience there exposed me to a couple things. One is like great love and support, and 2, this like gap between the resources and the freedoms that I had and that of like my best friends, classmates, the people who were becoming my family. And so so I started to be like, okay, how can I live with these people and with myself and with my family and let these things be? So that was one thing. And the other thing that was happening simultaneously was that I, for some random reason, ended up getting involved in the New Haven Leon Sister City Project. Which was founded because this country was basically funding a war on the Nicaraguan people, and New Haven wanted to have a different relationship with people. And so in Nicaragua, and so started this Sister City project with Leon. And there, I went down when I was in high school. I saw what this country was doing around the world, that some of the same things, some of the same racism, oppression that was happening in New Haven, we were like exported around the world, and I saw it. And the other thing that I saw in Leon, which I hadn't seen so much in New Haven, because they were fresh off the Sandinista revolution, high school students were so like active, just politically engaged, like revolutionaries really, high school students, like students my age. And so that blew my mind. So when I came back to New Haven, I had those two things in me. And so got involved when I went to college in the Uhuru movement, and specifically a white people solidarity, or part of the Uhuru movement in Berkeley and Oakland, California. And basically have been sort of working to undo racism, particularly in white communities, and then more generally in various organizations since then. I do art, I think partly also because of my parents. They argued a lot, and I was like a peacemaker. And so art for me is a way to really challenge people, to push, while simultaneously maybe bringing them in, like bringing people together. And so New Haven has given me so much, so I, along with a bunch of other people, including Hanifa, work with The Word, which is this youth poetry organization. You're gonna hear a young poet, Keona, later today. That comes from the model of one of my mentors, teachers, June Jordan, who started the Poetry for People program at UC Berkeley, out of this belief that the creation of new living poetry can be a way to liberate us all and to look at and shift internal and external things in society. So yeah, trying to model the word after Poetry for the People. Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
What do you do? Why do you do it? And what makes you passionate about this work of arts, healing, and justice?
Hello, everyone. Just want to say before I answer the question, I'm just deeply honored to be sharing a space with you all and with the amazing panelists, and just honored to, be commemorating Martin Luther King and our lineage. Freedom fighters, revolutionaries. I'm also a little nervous too, so. But yeah, I'm a community organizer. I organize here in New Haven. I've been organizing here in New Haven since about September 2008, specifically. I moved here to New Haven. I'm not from here. I'm from New York City originally. From the Bronx. And I moved here to go to Quinnipiac University, and I've just been here working professionally, also organizing in the community since then. And I've organized around issues of dealing with the education system right here in New Haven Public Schools. I've organized with parents, with youth, around educational issues. I've also currently organized around issues of police violence in the state. Right now, I recently started working at New Haven Legal Assistance Association, and I'm organizing around issues of community and economic development, which is a new learning for me. The reason why I do this work is much of like what everyone else presented is just from my lived experience. Born and raised, initially born in Brooklyn, and we moved to the Bronx. And just to be somewhat brief about my story, when I was a teenager, I believe I was 13, I was in the 8th grade, my family had a fire in our apartment, we lost everything. And I remember, my folks went to start to look to rent on the market in New York City. And I remember them having conversations, my mom's here, so hopefully I get everything right. But I remember them having conversations around how much the rent had risen at that time. This is around like the year 2000 in New York. So gentrification was really, it really wasn't much in the discourse, I would say nationwide, but gentrification was aggressively happening in New York City. And we saw, even in the Bronx where we live, the rents kind of had doubled and tripled in value in the same neighborhood, and we had the same services, under-resourced schools, neighborhoods that were over-policed. So my folks wanted to provide a better quality of life for us and had the means to move, so we moved about an hour and a half north of the Bronx in Dutchess County, New York. And I attended a suburban high school named Arlington High School in LaGrange, New York. It was night and day for me. I went from, being very independent and doing kind of almost what I wanted to do to being in a very confined, suburban space. The cultures are very different. And I remember going to school, and I just remember the experience in school being night and day. And I remember, I specifically remember how much resources the school had. My high school looked like a college campus. We had computers in every room. It was mandated that you type your homework, right? This was something standards we weren't held to in the schools that I went to in the city. And I just remember wondering why the conditions and the resources were so different. Just one, an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes out the city. And remember just keeping in touch with my friends and seeing, essentially seeing the school to prison pipeline, but not being able to name that, right? Seeing people fall by the wayside. And me understanding that I had an opportunity and I needed to seize it. But being very angry about that. I didn't want to leave the city. I didn't understand why we had to move. I understood why we had to move, right? But I don't think that that's okay, that people have to move to get access, to get resources. So I just began to question very early on. I had a teacher who, Miss Siani, who I'm still in a good relationship with, who provided me with a Sister Soldier book. I believe it was No Disrespect. It was something that helped me. It was a point of entry for me in my understanding that kind of my experience was larger. And I went on to college. I came to Quinnipiac, very much because of that, that journey or that path my folks were able to take me on, that I'm very grateful for. And I remember just coming to Quinnipiac and even going to a PWI, being really in an exclusive space, in a space where there were very few students of color on campus, and me, being even more frustrated about that. And I remember Katrina happening and that politicized me even more, and just really being angry that we had to, I had to fight. My parents had to fight, my family had to fight for me to get to where I was, and I knew that there were, countless others like me in my situation, and I just kind of had that fire in my belly to organize, and I didn't know how, or I was majoring in journalism, but that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the ground, and I wanted to create right, a situation where I could help like people like myself navigate in the system, right, to be able to attain education, to be able to make it to the university, to be able to not have to leave where you're from, right, to get what you need. So I could keep going, I don't want to belabor the conversation, but that's kind of some of what really drove me to organize.
I think I remember.
You remember? Okay, awesome.
Don't know this. Okay. So hi everyone again. I'm also nervous. My name is Mikveh Ali Warshaw. I use she and her pronouns or they and them pronouns. I also want to thank all the organizers for this event and all the amazing panelists. And along those lines, I just want to also mention that there could be like rows and rows of chairs up here for all the other organizers that aren't in this space right now. There's so many other, like, specifically black and brown women that I know that are doing dope organizing in New Haven with ULA, with Housing Not Jails, with the CT Bail Fund. There's just a lot of people that could be up here. I mean, Risë talked about that before we did this, and I just think it's really important that we keep doing events like this, and this is not like the summation of badass organizers in New Haven or around Connecticut. Like, there's so many people that we're arm in arm with that are helping us do this work. They're helping me do this work for sure, that I'm learning from. And along those lines, I'm relatively new to New Haven. I came here for nursing school in 2014 from Massachusetts, and why I do this work is both like the ingredients are like trauma, love, and like dreaming. I think the mix of like the traumas I've experienced in my life, like from gender violence to like emotional abuse in the family, like these type of things, complex family relationships, and like a dose of anti-Semitism and a dose of like living in Christian hegemony, while also like being white and having a mother that made money. So it was like a complex situation growing up where I was benefiting a lot from a lot of the, I think like privilege trumps oppression a lot of the times, and it sucks because our internal experience doesn't recognize that, but the outside world does recognize that. So that's how I got to Yale, right? I worked my ass off for sure, but I had a lot of stuff supporting me. And love, because like if it wasn't for experiences of like true love, like not just for myself but with other people, but in experiences of like events like this, or just like on the dance floor, or just like parties that have like really done it, and like rituals in my life, or like for me it's been a lot of like beautiful Jewish services. That like sensation of love has like made me be like, oh, we need this, like this needs to be here. And dreaming is kind of tied to both of those things. One of them is like dreaming of like how to have more of that, and how to have like less trauma for myself and like all around me. So that brought me into like doing healing work. I've been like, a lot of people and healers are like healing themselves. It's why I'm in it. Like, your psychiatrist has a lot of issues. So that's me. I'm definitely like in the work of healing myself, while also I know like the most effective thing for my patients and myself is to be on the streets, because it's the social conditions that are really causing 95% of why we're all, going to a psychiatrist in the first place.
Thank you. So one of my earliest memories as a child, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and my grandmother was a nurse. And she worked the night shift, and in the summer times, I lived with my grandparents. This is a common thing in our community where, the grandkids would stay with the grandparents, and so the parents could have their summers to either work or to go to school, as my mom did, or just to have a frickin' break. And so we'd be all piled in the basement in the various rooms, and I would always hear my grandmother coming in from the night shift, and she was always humming. And she'd come creaking down the stairs, and she would put on the coffee pot. That's just like what she did. And she loved to iron, which I don't quite understand because I iron too. But she would always be ironing her uniforms for the next shift. She would wake me up. And she'd be like, Neve, come on, wake up. And because she loved it when I put my hands on her back and on her feet. She's like, Hanifa, you have healing hands. And it's just something, she's like, you got healing hands, you're very special. And so this became this ritual between me and my grandmother for years. And it's one, like, I literally remember being like 5 or 6 and just like had this dynamic with her. And then I would often like fall asleep on her. And then somehow, magically wake up in my bed in the morning. And so for me, being somebody who is one, very intuitive and super empathetic, and someone who really enjoys being close and with people and creating community, it's no doubt that this year with my partner in healing, Tamar Graves, we're going to be opening something called One Village Healing. Because I believe that we are One Village Healing from a lot of stuff, a lot of things, and really calling it out. We're One Village Healing from being defragmented, from issues and from the forces of oppression, from the forces of poverty, and other forces of systemic oppression, racism, white supremacy, the patriarchy. All these things defragment us in ways that we don't understand, and I'm calling it out. And I'm saying we're creating spaces and healing spaces and opportunities and group circles to consciously heal together from this defragmentation so that we can be whole and energized and wildly free, because that is what we're here to be. So with that said, I'm curious from the panelists up here who are, doing all types of stuff, and I've done all types of things over the years. Organizing is not easy, right? It's you're just creating the foundation you're working on, and you're running, and you're trying to find support. Sometimes you're not sleeping. Who knows what you're eating? And you try to find balance. And I'm speaking from the eye. That's my life sometimes. And my love for the youth I work with, and for the activists and the loved ones in my life is strong, and often I forget about my body, and I forget about my own soul, and I forget about my aches and pains and my own traumas and what I'm carrying. And so a few years ago, maybe not 6 years ago, I really took it seriously as a business to really look at myself and to hold a mirror up and to go in and to really take my healing seriously, and to not toy around with it, because how good am I if I'm all broken trying to hold other people together? And so I'm curious, folks up here, what are your practices in this world? How do you seek wholeness? What do you do to rest and restore? It's important that we share these things.
Okay, I can be quick with answering that because I just came off of a month and a half long vacation in California. I just got back last night. And that's what I've been doing a lot of. And I have to say, what really pushed me to start taking care of myself was last year, which was part of the evils of doing this work. I was assaulted on the green by New Haven police officers. And, it just put me in a state of like depression, and I was like, didn't want to do anything, just so traumatized by the whole experience that it made me stop and think about, myself. Like, here I am now, I have to heal. And people were saying, well, where's Barbara? We haven't heard anything from her, and because Barbara has to heal. Barbara's a human being, and Barbara was hurt, deeply hurt. And what made it worse is not even having the police or the mayor or anyone even acknowledge that they did anything wrong to me. So that makes my healing that much tougher. So I had to realize I have to heal myself. So I went into therapy for a while, but from that, I said, you know what, I'm not gonna stay in therapy for the rest of my life. I'm gonna get past this, I'm not gonna give them that much power. And so I decided instead, I started working on losing weight. And so I'm approaching my 50-pound weight loss. I go to the gym almost every single day. I keep beautiful music going through my ears, flowing through my ears. I just refuse to give up my power. So for those who are wondering where I am, I'm healing, but I'm coming back, and I'm coming back stronger than before. So what they did to break me down, they have helped to rise me up. They have given me more fuel than I've had in the last 50 years. And I'm not gonna stop. 50 years of fighting, and they thought they had me. But they didn't. So, right now I'm focusing on a lot of police brutality. And I look at like, how many years I've been fighting this? If you look through here, if you look through my work, you'll see like 15 years ago I was fighting for bail reform. 15 years ago. 15 years ago I was fighting for policies to change the way the police treat us in our community. 20 years ago, I was fighting for the end all of this prison industry that's going in our country that continues to flow up and up and up. I fought to make sure that people no longer, when they have someone in prison, that they don't have to use all of their money trying to pay the FCC, pay the phone companies for being able to call home to be in touch with their loved ones. I don't know how many years I've been fighting to have one legislator have the guts to stand before this country and say we need to end this war on drugs. This selectively enforced war on drugs. This war on drugs happened, and anybody can research it. It happened because President Nixon at the time felt that two groups of people were the problem in America. He said black people and war resistors. He said what we have to do is devise a system that takes care of those problems without appearing so. The very next day, we had the war on drugs. And if the war on drugs has not put us backwards, nothing is. It's the best tool that they've had to incarcerate our people in mass numbers. And no one is fighting back to end this war. So I've been saying this for about 20 years, and I'm going to continue to say it, because I'm sure eventually some legislator is going to have the guts enough to say, we need to end this, we know what it's about. And it's doing exactly what we thought it was going to do. It's the new Jim Crow. I'm waiting for that legislator to do that, and I'll let them take the credit for ending it. I don't want to take the credit. But we need to end this war on drugs.
Yes. That's what happens when you take a vacation. Let's all take a vacation. 2 months. Kerry, I see you got that mic.
So I'm not the best at taking care of myself, but when I like to do like what brings me pleasure. So like I love to laugh, so I like to watch comedies. I'm a little broke, I can't go on vacation yet, so I Netflix, a good stand-up. I like to play basketball. Aaron beats me all the time when we play. Yeah, basketball, laughing, anything that like brings me joy and allows me to just decompress. So I've really been trying to pay attention to that because the work does take a big toll on your body, and it can go unnoticed when your adrenaline's going and you're like constantly responding right to the rapid, like urgent crises on the ground. And so yeah, so I would say comedy, basketball, I like to dance. And just kind of, I don't exercise as much. I want to get there, but
It took me a while to get there.
that's what brings me pleasure. And, yeah.
I can say 2 words.
Yes, 2 words.
I mean, you want to change the question? Some days are better than others. Some months are better than others. Some years are better than others. I go to therapy. I met a therapist that's like been really good for me after a lot of bad therapists. I do Aikido, which I haven't done for the past like 2 months, so that's where I'm at right now, but usually I'm doing Aikido a lot, which helps me out a lot. And I have like sweet friends that know when to check in with me and when to take care of me and when I'm not doing a good job, and that's probably the most vital thing, is like having that family around to be like, hey, are you smoking cigarettes? Are you eating food? The smoking cigarettes is a no thing, but eating food is a yes thing. Make me teas. I have like friends to call and to check in with, and those are the key things, I think, in slowing down.
Yeah, self-care can be seen as like a revolutionary act, because they expect us to not take care of ourselves. They expect us to run ourselves ragged, to be divided, to not be in community. And so it's important to me that we think of self-care as not something to do on Saturday, or that's just about like looking good, but it's actually about feeling good, and about being real about where we're at. And that if we don't do it, no one's going to do it for us. And it's just such a vital lesson, I think, for all activists, for anybody out there doing this work, to take care of yourself and to make that a part of your activism is actually taking care of yourself. And I know that part of what I do that I feel like is not taking care of myself is spending so much time, like I might zone out, like on social media, and I feel like, oh, I'm resting. And then you just start swiping, again, and I'll turn it off, and then like some magical force like makes my hand pick the phone back up and open the same app. And so I want to talk a little bit about social media and its impact, right? So here we are in this room, but in all of our pockets and our bags are these little amazing, expensive computers that literally connect us to the world. And I'm curious about how we use this tool as activists and organizers and healers. How has it been helpful in connecting to the global movements and communities? And also, what ways is it a deterrent or a distractor for you all?
I keep forgetting I had to turn this. I'm so used to my big mouth on the microphone. Social media can be a good source, but it can also be a bad source. I got to the point where I had to take Facebook off my phone because I found I was constantly, like you, I'm constantly hearing the thing go off, and I wanted to know what was going on. I also found that sometimes social media, just because it opens you up to the whole world, you see so much that is going on here, is going on across the country, and sometimes it can be a little discouraging. So I had to actually limit the time that I spend on social media, and I keep my group kind of small, so I don't get to see everything that's going on. So, but I use it to educate mostly. My page is mostly to put stuff up to educate, have conversations about it.
Do you get a good response from people?
Well, it depends. Everybody's not where I am. I keep remembering that Malcolm X said, never criticize those who are not where you are, because there was a time when you weren't there. And I constantly remind myself. So I put it up there. People that want the information is there, and if they don't, I did my part.
One of the ways that I take care of myself occasionally is doing a silent retreat, just in my house, in our house, me and my partner, and that involves, we put our phones and computers.
I know, I'm trying to get hold of you.
Put our phones and computers in a box for a few days, and it is really cleansing. I mean, there's various things about not talking for a few days that can, for me anyway, especially as an introvert who has to interact with people, unfortunately.
Okay, hold on. So you're on a silent retreat in your house with your partner. So you're not talking to each other, and your phones are in boxes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I recommend it to everybody.
You're not talking to each other either?
You're not talking to each other in the house. Get together in the house and not talking.
So that's one side of it, is that it's for me, it's really rejuvenating to put those things in a box, and to be communicating with, like with myself. It helps me be a whole, you were talking about wholeness, it helps me be a whole person, because when we're on these machines, we're divided. Like, we're going in a million different directions because there's all these different people who are wanting parts of us. And so it helps me become a whole person again. So that's one thing. On the other hand, there's the example of social media working, like Kerry, People Against Police Brutality, Ali, a bunch of people were including me, were organizing to get folks to get the Board of Alders to delay their vote in December until they could pass a civilian review board that acknowledged subpoena power, that had investigatory power, etc. And I think social media was good at like helping to get people out to the Board of Alders meeting. And then Travis Carbonella did this video of what happened at the meeting that then a whole bunch more people saw and started to become aware of what was going on. So I think, now people stop and Kerry on the street even more than before, being like, I just witnessed, thank you, and just kind of being able to spread this things that, not in like an instant way, but that I think that video was an example of something that told a whole story within a video and was spread on social media.
So social media, I can't emphasize this, has been super critical in the fight against police violence here in Connecticut. Just to give y'all a context, and much of you probably already know, there is a wall of silence in Connecticut when it comes to media coverage, mainstream media coverage of police violence. So like without social media, we would really have a big hole in our movement. So in so many ways it's been critical. I think one, to just give the people a platform to communicate that police violence is happening wherever they are. I think in Connecticut, a lot of what happens is police violence will happen in different municipalities, but it doesn't get past that municipality, right? So by the advent of social media has allowed us to communicate across the state when police violence happens. Because if you look at news articles, I just want to recognize that we're coming on 2 years. 2 years ago, a young man by the name of Vincent Folks in Norwalk, 2 years ago on January 26th, coming up on a date, was chased down a windy hill by a Norwalk police officer who just decided to chase Vincent. He also goes by the name of Kuda, that's how his community refers to him, but just decided to chase Vincent because he thought he had been a suspect to something that had happened in the neighborhood. And within instance of Kuda going down that windy hill, he hit a tree and died instantly. And his brother, who's in the car with him, who's 19, he just had a newborn, has had brain damage from that. He survived it. He broke a lot of his bones and has had a lot of trauma in just his recovery. And that story, I'm sure much of you haven't heard of, right? Just to say that there's been, in the past 2 years, there's been, what we know, there's probably an underreported number, 19 people killed in this state from police violence in the past 2 years. Right? So we often, because we're little old Connecticut, we look to big cities and we respond to their crises, but we don't know police violence is happening right here in our own state, and that's much of because of complicity between state bodies and the media, mainstream media, just to name it. So when you go back and you look at these stories of aggressive police chases that have killed people, you see them being reported in mainstream media as crashes, an individual crash. There was a young man by the name of Jarrell Gibbs this past August who was a passenger in a car that was being chased by an unmarked Hampton police car, who went over the New Haven jurisdiction. And witnesses say they saw this car crash or hitting the car Jarrell was in. Jarrell was killed when that car hit a tree, right on Quinnipiac Avenue this past August. So social media has allowed communities to say that this violence is occurring when the news won't. Social media has allowed us to get the word out about direct actions that we're having so people can show up and support communities in the advent of police violence. It has allowed us to raise money. I got in this work when a good friend, a best friend, was shot when he was unarmed by police back in 2010. He was in 2010, in January 2010, actually. And my best friend, J.L. Richardson, he was then accused of assaulting a cop, because there was no video to prove that he didn't. He was looking at facing 25 years to life in prison. And he wanted to organize, and he did not want to plea out, which most people have to do, right? Because we don't have the resources in our communities. So we organized, the community came together to organize around his case and to raise money, and we were able to raise, I would say, $10,000 in under 2 years so he could solidify his counsel, and we did that using social media. Jason Negron was shot multiple times by Officer James Boulay, or the police officer James Boulay. James Boulay has not been charged. What happened to Jason, the reason why it got national notoriety is because there was someone who saw what happened and recorded Jason still breathing after this monster handcuffed him, right after he was shot. So he was still breathing, and he could have been, if they would have called EMT services right away, the Bridgeport police waited 20 minutes. So they put Jason in handcuffs. Jason was still breathing, and they waited 20 minutes to call for any emergency services, and when they did, it was for the police officers who they claimed were injured. And Jason's body was left on the ground from about 4:45-ish when he got when he was shot and murdered by this officer James Boulay, and his body was left on the ground until 10:45 that night. Someone who witnessed him laying on the ground when he was in handcuffs took a video, and that changed the game and the narrative of what happened to Jason. Because if we didn't have that video, it would be a very different narrative. If that video didn't trend across, the nation on social media, that shows him still breathing moments after, and the fact that he could have survived. So social media is essential, I think, to the movement and to the work, especially in a situation where where whole communities are being blacklisted by media, and the real truths of what's occurring in these communities aren't being accurately covered or underreported or not reported at all.
Yes. So I want you to feel what you're feeling in your heart, and I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that as you're moving into the world. I want you to remember that days from now. I want you to remember it next year. Remember this feeling. And also know that there's all of these people in this room, many people in different rooms and in different organizations and all across this city and this world, standing up, living justice, not just fighting for it. And it's important that we remember that we're not alone in this either. And so that brings me back to the theme of sort of beloved community. This quote that Risë read earlier by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This was actually the speech that he addressed at it was called Facing the Challenge of a New Age. It was at the first annual Institute on Nonviolence and Social Change on December 3rd, 1956 in Montgomery, Alabama. And I'm just going to repeat the quote. But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of a beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding, goodwill, that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men. And I just want to ask one final question before we open it up to my friends up here. When you think of beloved community, when you think about New Haven, beloved community, you think about literally streets called division that divide Yale from the rest of the city. You think about this division that happens all the time between the town and the university. These relationships are very tenuous and strained, sometimes very beautiful. What can beloved community look like as we grow into our justice work and our community building and our being together? What is that? Just what's the vision of that for you? I'll start off. Because I love food, I think that somehow having more community dinners or dining together in intentional ways, and inviting in, and not just Yale, but all the universities in New York, there's so many of them, but having more times where we're consciously in fellowship together, and not just when there's a problem, but also in celebration, and not just at arts and ideas.
I think, for me, I think it's constantly changing, right? Like it depends on where I'm at, but something that I spend a lot of time dreaming of, and I think my life's work is about, is supporting, like bringing the softness or bringing the gentleness or bringing the nuance, the complexity into whatever gatherings we're having. So in organizing spaces, having more time to reflect and more time to tell stories and you know, it's amazing because maybe even like why I love the city and why I'm staying, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is there's so much work already happening for storytelling, for people to connect at a deeper level. And I think for me, like a beloved community means like you get to come in as whole as possible, and I think while I dream of us all being fully whole, I don't, you know, it's okay that we're not always fully whole, and I don't get to be fully whole a lot, and that's okay. But I want to be making spaces that are doing our damn best, like every time to try to recognize. There's a quote by Melanie K. Kantorowicz, who passed away this summer. She's like a radical Jew, lesbian, who wrote the book Color of Jews and just did a lot of dope work around talking about radical Judaism, what that looks like. And one of the ways she said that looked is that someone's always like talking about creating ritual, Jewish ritual. Like Jews are a really diverse group of people with many different ways to be Jewish. So she talked about creating rituals together, and then she said something like, this isn't perfect, but something like, during ritual, someone should always be uncomfortable, but it should never be the same person, right? So like creating spaces where and I think that's really beautiful and great, and I think we should really pay attention to that. Who's being uncomfortable in these spaces, and how do we shift that up, and how do we make sure that we're constantly addressing that? So for me, like more spirit always. The thing that's kept me in the movement has been radical Jewish ritual for me, because that's where my lineage goes. And for a long time I was like exiled from it for being anti-Zionist and being trans, and building that community here is because I think we're most grounded when we're doing things from a full space, like the politics is part of the spirit. I think TW was in Cruz who said like something about like, I don't want to separate myself, and I feel that way in a beloved community. I won't feel separate. Like I'll be able to bring my politics, and we'll all get to bring our ancestors and our ways of praying into that space, and then let it thrive. And I think we do so much more effective work. I do so much more effective work when I'm coming at it from a place of like knowing that the ancestors I want with me are with me, and that I have song and I have prayer, and I have like an ancient, like spiritual technologies to teach me how to deal with the hard conversations and the breakup and the like when we hurt each other, because we're gonna still fuck up in a beloved community, and that has to be still okay.
For me, a beloved community begins with love. For me, it's about loving humanity. And that's why I do a lot of the work that I do, because I recognize the humanity in people. And so it doesn't matter who you are, we need to love, just if nothing else, that we're human beings and love humanity enough to want to get out there and do something when we see these injustices happening. So I think it's so much about just loving and being you and allowing other people to be themselves and just love our humanity and all the human beings around us. I think a lot of the stuff that goes on across this nation, probably across the world, that goes on is because many times our humanity is not even recognized, especially when it comes to starting back in with Africans and slavery. They were never ever recognized as full human beings, and sometimes I think that still is hard for people to recognize everyone as a full human being, and that's why they can allow things to happen and it doesn't bother them. So Martin Luther King had a quote, I don't remember the exact thing, but I know it was about when any of the work that we do, we have to rise above our own individual stuff and work toward humanity. And I think if we can do that, that's the beginning of a beloved community. And like you said, we're not going to be whole, but we can at least work toward that.
I'm thinking about, I guess, something that you said at the beginning, Eric, about sitting with, I don't know how you put it, but sitting with discomfort or a feeling that I think also connects to something that you just said, Ali. That beloved community, and I think you're also talking about some like connecting Yale and New Haven in that, and so being able to sit with and in discomfort and conflict. So for me, for an example, I was writer in residence at Yale New Haven Children's Hospital for many years, and in a department, a child life department, that was almost entirely white. And where I think in a hospital where white supremacy shows up in various different ways, like throughout the whole system. Like while I was there was like really quietly, like affirmative action was like officially done away with in throughout the hospital. We got an email, whatever. So me, like wanting to shift things in that, and like talking to my bosses, my fellow employees in the department. But because I want to be liked, I want to be okay with people. I want people to feel okay. I push it a little bit maybe, but then I'm like, yeah, and we'll work on it. We'll do it. But maybe little things happen and maybe not much happens. Because the love that I come with is maybe more about, I don't know, like, or it's small. And I just want to lay that like parallel to experience that I had with Kerry recently, where we were in a meeting with the mayor and some of the board of alders about the Civilian Review Board. And Kerry is challenging them people with relatively a lot of power in New Haven in a way that is loving and so solid that it doesn't back down. It isn't like, oh yeah, and if I would love for us to really feel okay in this moment, or for you to like me, or whatever. But it's just so solid, and the endurance. This is something that TW has talked about. The endurance that Kerry has for sitting in with discomfort, with conflict, with people, is a huge and important part of I think any movement, definitely movements here in New Haven. And I think connecting that back to Martin Luther King, like I think the majority of white people today would not be as down with MLK if he were alive.
Right.
If he were, you know, if he were really like speaking, because he also and many of the leaders with him would keep pushing, would sit with and with white people's discomfort, with like physical discomfort and in the body, and that endurance and the like bigness and strength and persistence of that kind of love is what we need for a true beloved community to happen in the city.
So, like in the vein of what Aaron's saying, that's the right word was, I think belovedness, I've been thinking a lot about this, but not in that context, so thank you, Hanifa. I think belovedness in the work looks like for me, I think like, and I'm specifically thinking about like the people that have helped me to get to this point, where I can like stand on my own too and be unapologetic and be fearless, is just from watching like my sisters around me, my black women, like just fight and tear down the system, and do it like with the weight of the world on their shoulders. So I don't want to, like, I'm not accepting like what you just said, Aaron. That comes from like the people in my lineage, people in my community, like black women that have fought endlessly, tirelessly, people like Barb, so your belovedness looks to me like remembering that we're in a context where people are dying to live.
Yeah.
And doing what we can to lift the burden off of people who are most vulnerable. And again, my focus is on black women. Working class black women, right? Poor black women. How do we, people struggling to make it, how do we like acknowledge that and not stick to the confines of what capitalism and what being an individual and what being successful looks like, but really building communities where we can lift the burden off each other. We throw around that term self-care a lot, but a lot of people don't have the time to take off work to do self-care, right? How do we help to extend resources to the point my brother Eric made earlier, and our privilege or whatever resources we may have to help the people like that are helping us, or the people right around us. So I haven't been the best in my organizing. Like sometimes organizing can be so issue focused, and we forget like the people around us in the nucleus that kind of sustains us, and that we have to. I think we have to lift the burden off of folks as much as we can. Collectively, and not subscribe to the system that we're in. right? Where we have to, where everybody has to be like an individual. So what ways, like, if therapy is the thing, right? Like, what ways can we make therapy affordable for maybe people who would like to access it but can't afford it? Right here in our communities, like right in your neighborhood, right on your block, right? What ways can we lift the burden so folks can take a day off work? What ways can we lift the burden so folks can make their rent? There's so many things, but I think just remembering that the system's really violent. The system is really violent, and some of us have a little bit of ease in navigating it, and a lot of us don't. And I'm not speaking in this abstract way. I mean, like the people, right? Your cousins, your aunties, your neighbor, right? Who are the people that could help? That could use a little bit of help or some resources, and be unapologetic about helping to hold that burden, whatever that may be. I think that's what the love of this.
Thank you. Thank you, friends and panelists up here. We're going to open this up now for the questions. How much time do we have for that? 10 minutes? All right, so we'll take some questions. Can some of you, he's running. Yeah, okay, so yeah. If you want to, when you grab the mic, please just, if you can, could you say your name? And then if you have a question for one of us in particular, that would be helpful. So yeah, go for it.
And you're calling people?
Yes, so this in the beige right here. Right there.
Malcolm Ashland, Class 81. Just want to say you guys are great. As a Southern activist of long standing by way of Tuskegee, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia, and having had the opportunity to hear King when I was a young man, one of the things I think is important tonight is that we recognize the fact that King talked about render unto Caesar those things that are Caesar, which means he talked about change with institutional change. On the program we have tonight is a famous picture of Martin King getting his honorary degree at Yale. I want you to take a look at that picture because here we are 59 years later, and the results of his constructive engagement with institutions has led directly to you being here tonight by way of us having at what was once an all-male institution, bastion of American imperialism and all these things, an institution nonetheless that found room to now have as a secretary of this university, Cruz, Secretary Cruz, and Dean, our beloved Dean here, Risë Nelson. You wouldn't be here and we would not have this discussion if King did not make a commitment to an institution to change. And we can see the results of his commitment to institutional change by our being here tonight and the representatives that are here for us. And I'd like y'all to give applause to Dean Cruz and to Secretary Cruz and to Dean Nelson because they are unsung heroes. Down in Georgia. And the reason that this institution has made way for people of consciousness on either side of the debate is because of leaders that we have here. Now, in closing, I just want to pose a question to you. As we move into the next phase of revolution, having been to the Soviet Union, having been to Cuba and other places, it always comes down to the institutions. How do we engage them? How do we move them? If Martin King in 1964 could imprint upon the consciousness of Yale its need to change, where Yale professors went down and marched in Neshoba County, Mississippi during the Freedom of Summer, I'd like you activists on this stage to talk about how you could have more successes like the community review panel, which is an institutional change. Sometimes we have to get in the belly of the beast to make the beast change. Just think about it, please.
So, can
I'll answer real quickly. One of the professors that I had when I was going to school told the class that we were agents of change. I was going for my master's in social work. She said, your job is not just to sit in the office and counsel people, you're to be agents of change. And that voice echoed in my head all of these years after. So when I go for looking for change, I'm not looking for the little tweaks in the law, which is why I say everybody's not where I am. I'm looking for institutional change. Someone asked me today, a reporter asked me, how did I feel about, the 15-year-old that got body slammed in New Haven and about the police officer. I said, I don't waste time dealing with the officer. I'm trying to change the system that allowed that officer to do what he did and get away with it. And if you're not about changing the system, dismantling the system, I'm so tired of talking about hearing reform, but that's all we talk about, reform. I've been doing reform work for about 40 years. I don't even want to talk to anybody who's talking about reform anymore. No disrespect, but I'm past that. It's about dismantling these systems of oppression in this country, and nothing less.
Other questions? Do I see anyone? Anybody else?
My name is Robin Ellington. Hi, everybody. I just want to know, with everything that each of you do, whether it's healing, whether it's police brutality or the prison system, just being there for everybody, with your own kind of crew that you work with, so the people that you work with close to you in community activism, it seems like there's always kind of this thing that we go through in life, is one after the other, one after the other. Oh my goodness, I didn't even get a chance to get a meal, I didn't even get a chance to rest, I'm working on this, and now there's something else that came up. So you being a leader in what you do, and with the people that are beside you, how do you keep everybody just intact at those moments when things just keep pounding at your door and things keep hitting you that you have to be there for? How do you keep yourself intact and the people that you work with intact to be a community activist and go through it? Because it's just, constant, just everything coming at you at once. And there may be a new case, there may be a new police brutality case. Then, there's things going on in the prison system now where they have prisoners fighting fires for like 2 or 3 cents an hour, you know what I'm saying to you? So there's always something pounding at the door. So when it keeps coming at you like that, how do you successfully deal with that? And to keep your people around you successfully dealing with it?
How do you do it? I think we're probably all, I know I'm struggling with that question all the time. And I think this can also connect to institutions. I agree that we need to change institutions, and that's the work, and I think the work that we do. There's a lot of ways to do that, and one of the ways that a lot of people do it, who might not be on the stage, and some of us are on the stage, is by taking care of each other, right? Like there's a lot of ways to be an activist and an organizer, and it's not always being the one with the mic, and it's not always being the one at the meetings. It's the one who's cooking food for your friend or showing up, and I think we need to lift those people up a lot and do that work. The people who are doing childcare, the people who are creating systems where we're paying attention to those things, because the state systems won't do that for us. So we need to do it for each other, especially radical organizing. It's a dream of mine is to have more radical organizing that's specifically around taking care of organizers, right? Like Kerry should have her meals made for her, right? Like Kerry should get some we should have organizations that when parents come, their kids are watched for, and it's like that. I don't think we have the structure yet, because doing this work is constantly attacked by the police in psychological and real ways all the time. So I think it's constantly dismantling. So it's so good for you to point to that, because I think we need to keep pointing to how do we take care of our organizers that are putting their lives on the line, and how do we take care of their partners and their lovers, because there's a lot of intimate partner violence within organizing communities. How do we name that and address these things, because we're real people and we hurt each other. So how do we keep doing this work?
We'll take some more questions. Who can answer first? Yeah, I don't see the hand. Oh, the purple
Okay,
shirt.
take him and then somebody
No,
else
the
over
purple
here.
shirt person first.
Burgundy.
Whoever they are. Burgundy? Okay, yeah.
Anthony, my only question is, like, how do you deal with the pushback when you're trying to go into these communities and like fix these problems in ways that people really don't necessarily always want to face? I'm not talking about the pushback from like the systems in place that you're trying to fix. I'm talking about the pushback from the people that you're actually trying to help. Because sometimes not everyone wants an outside person or outside community to come into their own community and be like, I'm here to help you, when it's not the help that they necessarily ask for.
It's a really good question. Pamela?
This is maybe a little sideways from your question, but so the most recent project that I've been working on called Activist Songbook. So my work as an artist has always been trying to like engage with issues that I'm seeing and trying to change them maybe, right? Whether they be in New Haven or somewhere outside of New Haven. And what my collaborator, Byron O. Young, who's a Chinese-American composer who lives in San Francisco now, what he and I are doing in that project, as we interview people, like these Asian American organizers of all ages, we turn their stories into songs and raps and chants and whatnot, but we also ask, like, what do you need? How do you want to use these songs? What songs do you need? What raps do you need? What chants do you need for what movement? And so yeah, base it off of what people are asking for and saying, rather than just creating something from that we think would be good. I'll let someone else talk.
My response is going to be just a little bit different. You asked how do we engage people if we're outside that community? My biggest frustration has been engaging the people within the community, and I live within this community, and so that's been my biggest problem. I actually have been by my own people that I think I'm fighting for will say I'm a troublemaker. I need to stop causing trouble, and this is the people that I think I'm trying to help. So I used to be really frustrated about that because people call me all the time to tell me about all these different things that they wanted help with. And then I say, okay, well, let's have a community meeting. Let's bring some of the people that we have a problem with together. Let's do a protest. And then those people wouldn't show up, so I would get very frustrated. So my son helped me with that. One day he said to me, when I was frustrated, he said, Mom, you have to remember, even when slavery was over, everybody didn't want to leave the plantation. And that's what helped me.
I will address that one too very quickly. Maybe speak a little bit to all the questions I've asked. But so I work also with an organization called Co-Creating Effective and Inclusive Organizations / Organizers, or CEIO, and the mission of that organization is to increase inclusivity and equity here, kind of focused in New Haven, and going about that in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways is working with community serving organizations, so large organizations who serve the community and have a direct impact on the community, and going in and partnering with them to do a power analysis of what's going on in the organization and really disrupt systems of oppression and supremacy, and to partner with them to reorder and reconstruct what's going on there. So that looks like maybe creating new positions, maybe it looks like eliminating positions, it looks like opening up how decisions are made. It looks like creating policies. It looks like really calling out supremacist behavior. And so there's always resistance. And some people get nervous, right? Oh, we're not doing it right, because some people are nervous, or some people are quitting and leaving, and there's now more attention. You came in and you just screwed up our organization more, but actually, that's where the work starts to happen. When we start to get uncomfortable, we can sit in tough love, and we can sit with strongness and say, we are forcing this to change, and we're doing this with you. And so we're empowering your employees, we're empowering your staff, we're empowering your parents, we're empowering your youth, and giving them decision-making power to decide how they want to be together. And that is actually revolutionary in terms of how do we change large institutions and small institutions. It has to happen from the inside. And it has to happen with a new way, right? And leading from more of a heart space than an intellectual head space. And so instead of being afraid of the resistance, it is about pausing and recovering, asking, well, why are you uncomfortable? Why don't you understand? What can we do? And what is it that you need? And then also pulling in others who might be able to do that job a little bit better than you. So maybe you're not relevant to them. So pulling in other people, pulling in other leaders who can have more connection and who can make things happen faster. And all those things are important when you're talking about total systems change work. And that's really what I think, yes, King was getting at, is that this isn't just literally like whitewashing or coding something, but it's actually about totally shifting and transforming.
So last question, if we could get, we've heard a lot of male voices, so if we could have anybody else who wants to ask a question. Anybody? Question?
There's one here.
Hi.
Hi.
I organize in New Haven too. It's a really, really small place. And I think that makes organizing in New Haven different from organizing in other places maybe. It feels really permeable in some ways, and then also it just feels like, I just want you guys to talk about like small town accountability and like durability. Speak to that.
So the question was to talk about small town accountability and durability.
I think it's similar to sort of what I said before, that like, I don't think we have it worked out. I think like at least organizations I've been in, not just New Haven, but throughout, like accountability is a question that we, as like organizers, there's people that have done dope work around it, like Insight out in Philly have written a lot about what it, like organizing and radical accountability practices look like for when we hurt each other doing this work, because the work we're doing is hard, so it's easy sometimes to hurt each other, and we're all coming in imperfect, usually because of trauma and love, and those things are great, but so I think having like, part of it is like we need to build ways to do it and have it, but it's small town, so we know each other, so I feel like it's through like talking, it's through like going with your friend and being like, hey, this thing's going on, it's through like taking breaks to like reassess and sit with that like moment and then coming back. Part of the dream from the beginning that I would have is that we like create better systems in a small town where we have like, you know, people who have like volunteered as their organizing work is to do transformative justice, you know, to help when things go wrong, to be like, look, I'm having this conflict with this person, or this person did this thing, like let's hold it, right? Let's hold it, because I think we grow the most when we have conflict and when we heal from it. But I think a lot of people get pushed out. I know a lot of friends who are now just like doing their own thing because they've like had conflict, or they've been burned by people, or they've been in organizing spaces and we're doing rad work, and then, you know, something flares up and then we have like a big event and then they're out, you know? So I think it's a detriment to our movement that we don't talk about accountability and transformative justice, which to me is like taking the work of policing into our own hands and not policing, but, you know, restructuring it. It's a term that comes out of a lot of like Black and brown women organizing for years, of like, how do we deal with the fact that violence is happening in our organizing spaces, and we don't want to replicate police systems. and judicial systems, but we need to address this violence. That was a long way.
That's good.
I think we also, what's important in just holding the organization together is recognizing the role that different people play in your organization. Who's willing to take risks, who's not, who end up just want to put Band-Aids on things as opposed to really doing the system change. And one of the things Martin Luther King talked about also is the people who say some of the biggest enemies, like his words were, not exact words, were some of the biggest problems that African Americans are going to have, I say, in their fight for justice or whatever, is not so much the KKK, but it's the person, the moderate, is what he called them, who says, I'm with you in your struggle, but I don't know if I can do what you have to do. I don't know if I can go along with your direct action. So that's a huge problem too. There's a lot, and if I had $1 for every person that got behind me and said, you know, I'm with you, but I don't know if it looks like it might turn violent, you know, I think I'm going to be gone. So, you know, you gotta make sure you know that the people that you're with, if you're willing to take a risk and go whatever it takes, then you have to make sure the people that are around you, that you know you have people around you that are willing to do the same thing. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck out there by yourself. So that's another thing, just knowing the role of the people who are with you and how far they're willing to go to get justice.
Thank you. I think that we're complete. I know that we're not complete. And I just want to thank everybody for all your questions. And I just want to if we could just give a round of applause for all the folks that
Thank you all again. Before we close out the evening, want to just thank the many people who made tonight happen. That's Peter Crumlish, Karen King, Miranda Montfilston, Michael Morand, Anita Norman, Maytal Saltiel, Marquita Taylor, and Orlando Yarborough. I want to especially thank our speakers for doing such amazing work day in and day out and for being with us, taking a little time with us tonight. Also, Lisa Toniak, Christelle Mvieyi, Siade Tabele, my partner, Sarah Seymour, my partner in crime, Shane Boyd, my friend, Tegan Engel, and my girl, Addis Castillo, Executive Director of Citywide Youth Coalition. Thank you again. We're going to have a special performance in a moment, but I hope that you feel inspired by the legacy and the courage of Martin Luther King Jr. and freedom fighters from around the world and right here at home, past, present, and future. So let us go on to do the necessary work, the hard but best work of liberating ourselves and of bringing peace and justice to this world. Now please help me welcome Keona-Marie Gomes, a 15-year-old playwright, actress, and artist from Co-op High School and a member of the Word. Close it out.
Everyone see me okay? But yeah, my name is Keona-Marie Gomes, or just Keona if you haven't the time.
We got the time.
Yes. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not 9. I am a 15-year-old sophomore at Co-op High School where I study theater. And if you are familiar, I see some people who are. If you are familiar with the play that I've written and directing Waxman, or if you are familiar with The Word, specifically our showcase from last spring, you're going to be familiar with this piece, which I wrote as a freshman as sort of a coping piece, heavily inspired by the real life story of a friend that I grew up with, who we both grew up in New Haven. So I hope that you enjoy. I knew a kid named Andre once. He went to my school. He was the kind to act cool, yet the kind to smack fools, was the kind of weird out and ready to act dual, and his friends up and swearing on the clothes to be wearing and leave the boy tearing and the rest of us staring, and that was something. But he used to sit in the back of class with his headphones bumping, not caring about nothing because they words had him delirious. He took all that gang slang spit completely serious. That trash trap clapped, and that was his way to live vicariously to the tight pipe niggas that mysteriously had the world in their palm by acting wrong. They had given up school and started living through their songs. By February, Andre had evolved. He barely came to school because he was out feeding his greed. He didn't want a sweet life. He wanted shoes on his feet. He wanted to be the king of the streets. He wanted a future. He wanted to bring the state to its knees. If money's the root of all evil, he wanted to be hung with a chain from that tree. With eyes misty, he told me, who cares about my history? If living means loving, I'd rather die, and in my death, these snakes can spit on my grave, and it'll be a sign that they miss me. Till then, I'ma keep my shoes crispy. I'm an asphalt soldier, I'll let the streets enlist me. I'll millie rock on every block till my friends kill me on purpose, accidentally. But I still want all that, and a bag of chips, and a side of dip, and the kitchen sink, and don't you even think about asking me for your piece. Cause I do not break bread, I break legs. I'm a 15-year-old Dennis the Menace, king of Keona-Marie's down, fresh prince of the streets. I'll stick up an Evelyn's, I'll snatch the soul from your feet. Lay down and eat that defeat and call me XXX Tentacion, cause I want you to look at me. Last time I heard, his grandpa said, watch how you tread. Andre called him close-minded, and then he opened his head. He skipped out on the wake to be here instead, and he's right there. No, he's right there? No, I'm pretty sure he's next to you. Oh, he's next to you. He's next to all of you, except for the few who have never known the face of a young black boy. It doesn't help when our race breeds to feed the young that a strong black man is the one who slings guns for fun. And it is not funny how most of my friends think basketball and drugs are the only way to get money. Martin Luther King is probably rolling in his grave. Is this really the people that he died to save? And now you ask me what it means to be black, to be in a community, to be proud, to be seen. It means that a rich man's vision does not include prison, no matter how they lean. It means that a kid does not have to die or be a fiend to have a dream. Thank you.